Post-Apocalyptic badass survivor shit. SAS Saldana, main warehouse. The 6 hard men now arrayed against Juice in close quarters were completely transparently to him Spetsnaz, Russian special operators. There was nothing else like them, in the old world or this new fallen one, or in any conceivable world. Their identity just spilled out of them. Spetsnaz might not have the technology or training infrastructure of the Americans or Brits, but they had been, it was equally obvious just looking at them, trained and tormented to within an inch of their lives, tattooed on any and all surfaces, not necessarily with real tattoo needles, dunked in ice water, cut with knives, drop-kicked, cleverly beaten to leave no bruises. They'd had flaming boards broken across their bare backs, been dragged behind jeeps, involved in quite a lot of bare-knuckle boxing matches, and had concrete blocks laid across their abs and broken with sledgehammers. The shit these guys did to each other was absolutely legendary. There were some things even the SEALs wouldn't do to their candidates in Hell Week. Juice, personally, wasn't totally convinced that kind of training really made you elite or highly capable, but it definitely made you seriously fucking scary. He now saw one of the Spetsnaz dudes fiddling casually with an entrenching tool, which he seemed to be using to clean his nails. And that's when Juice remembered. The infamous spade. It was the first thing every Soviet soldier was issued, and he used it for everything, to dig in where he halted, creating great warrens of defensive trenches covering the whole Eastern Front and protecting Mother Russia. To dig graves, as many as were required. There were always more bodies to send to the front. To chop frozen bread, waiting for the lethal Russian winter to do its work on Napoleon or Hitler's legions. But one thing about Spetsnaz, they never took up defensive positions, so they never dug trenches. Instead, they sharpened their spades, and they used them for fighting and killing. Sometimes at a distance, learning to throw them with deadly accuracy and lethal force. There was that famous image that used to be on the web of the Spetsnaz dude doing a backflip 10 feet off the ground and hurling a hatchet with unerring accuracy into a human-shaped target. The version with the shovel probably just never leaked out. And now Juice flashed back to all those destroyed Zulus he'd found littering the naval base, all with perfect killing strokes right to the brainstem. Should have known, Juice thought. They were all shoveled to death. And now that shovel was pointed at him. He stole a quick glance up into the thin glare of the overhead lights, eyes adjusting, though not quickly enough. He didn't know for sure where the power had come from, but it wasn't hard to guess. There was plenty of fuel here, and no doubt a generator had been set up nearby, if not by the South Africans themselves, then by the Russians as part of their scavenging op. Misha spoke again now in his terrifyingly deep voice, not evidently all that happy to have to repeat himself. I said, "What's up, cracker? Or perhaps you're too elite to be down with our crew. Your ops are blacker than ours, is that it?" There was an edge to his voice that said this was a man you really didn't want to offend, and just beneath that edge there was the sense of some great storm front of barely controlled anger, one that threatened to come crashing down at any second into a thundering shitstorm. Juice wondered if maybe this guy was still pissed off about the death of the Soviet Empire. In his experience, Russians could be touchy at the best of times, and a blow to the national ego like that wouldn't help matters. Ah, hell, Juice thought. Who am I kidding? They still had the end of the world to look forward to, and they're no doubt loving this post-apocalyptic badass survivor shit. No one could be better suited for it. Juice kept his hands real still and out in plain sight, angled his head to the side without taking his eyes off them, and spat messily again on the bare concrete floor. "Vekoleg vizepal tsiravni," he said finally. It was an old Russian proverb. Teeth are all friends among one another. The terrifying Russian commando roared with laughter, the deep and throaty sound echoing around them in the cavernous space. "On dat govorit na Roskom," he bellowed. "Fantastica!" The others roared with them, and it sounded like howler monkeys or male lions or lowland gorillas, some big, mean, thick-chested predators declaring their dominance. Juice tried to smile in response, because if 6 Spetsnaz had shown themselves, that meant there were almost certainly at least 6 more out of sight somewhere, probably circling around on his flanks. And he needed a few seconds here to work out who these guys were, what exactly the hell it was they wanted, and which way this clusterfuck was likely to go. He was hopelessly outgunned, which meant he had to rely on his wits, and with those he knew he might still prevail. Okay, Juice thought, moving real slow and thinking real fast. What are these guys trying to do here? First, he had to assume they had been alerted by their command element on the battlecruiser that the American carrier was here, and almost certainly that they had a shore party inbound. The Admiral Nakimov would also be their ride out of the naval depot, but it had now been driven off by the John F. Kennedy, like a lion driving a pack of hyenas off a kill. Given that, what would the Spetsnaz shore team do first? Prepare a reception? Probably, Juice figured. But they also wouldn't necessarily want to start a fight if they could avoid it, not least because gunfights are noisy, and noise attracts the dead, who would ultimately finish any fight. The 60-second fuse on that VOIED, Juice thought. That was there just to scare us off. Otherwise, it would have been a 0-second fuse, and all Juice's problems, and probably those of at least 3 of the Marines, would now be over. Now that he thought about it, maybe it was never even going to go off at all. They wouldn't want to risk the noise. But if that didn't work, maybe they'd try negotiation. And that was what this was now. An attempt at some kind of accommodation? Nah. Juice dismissed the thought. If scaring them off didn't work, then he was pretty sure he knew what the Russians' next priority would be. Defend the supply depot. At all costs, and by whatever means. And in almost any way things were likely to play out by killing all the Americans sniffing around. So Juice wasn't the least bit surprised when he saw the half-dozen hard men lined up opposite him, moving as one, raise their primary weapons to their shoulders. But he was pretty damn surprised when he clocked their expressions and saw they actually looked worried. They were all looking over, behind, and around him. He did the same now, stealing a glance to his 6. And what he saw was a variety of tan and black barrels and optics peeking around from behind crates and pallets in an excellent tactical configuration. Oh, you leatherneck sons of bitches, Juice thought. His Marines were back.